Hi, this is Tom, amateur radio call sign N8FDY, and today it's time for another meter review. And this time it's going to be the Keysight U1242C. It's 10,000 count meter. Let's take a look. It comes with a box content list, some other little things. But the important thing is it comes with a certificate of calibration. One of the few meters I have that came with that. You very seldom find that in handheld meters. Usually that's an extra cost option, but it's included. So, you know, this has been tested. This is also third-party safety tested. CSA does the third-party safety testing on this. So it's got a calibration certificate. It's third-party safety tested. It comes included with the PC interface, USB to the optical. It comes with pretty horrible leads. That's where they let you down. They're plasticky. They're definitely not gold-plated. So, you know where these leads are going to go. And they include the 4 AAA batteries. They claim 400 hours on 4 AAAs. Well, we'll see. They even have a little sticker. You can, they have a little sticker you can stick on the meter. Let's go over the features of this meter. Well, this meter's been third-party safety tested by CSA for Canada and the United States. It's category 4, 600 volts, and category 3, 1,000 volts. This is a 10,000 count meter. It's also IP67 rated, so it's dust and water resistant. It has a 3 meter drop tested. It's got a 0.09% DC basic accuracy. It has a low impedance mode for those ghost voltages. It has a non-contact voltage detector. It has harmonic ratio measurements. It can do differential temperatures, but it did not include any thermocouples. It included an infrared to USB adapter with free downloadable PC software that only runs on Windows 10. Has a built-in flashlight. It has a claimed 400-hour battery life with the supplied 4 AAA batteries, and it has a 3-year warranty. Well, the layout is a little unusual. The buttons are a little unusual, and but we're gonna still test it. Well, I have to admit, I do not like the orange backlight. I'll start out with our old standby. This voltage reference I got off of Amazon. Now, all these voltage and currents and that were being judged against the Keithley DMM 6500, which is recently calibrated. I have that instead of having all those expensive standards, which I'm sure would be better, and it'd be great to have them, but I'm almost done reviewing meters anyway, so this is good enough. All right, the first voltage we're going to try is 2.5005. At least that's what the Keithley thinks it is. And this says 2500. Well, it's accurate as far as this goes, so that's pretty good. Remember, this is a 10,000 count meter, so that's pretty good. This voltage is 50009 according to Keithley, and this guy says it's 4.999. Well, it's close. Here's a 7.5016, and he says 7499. Again, it's close. Here's a 10.0015, and he reads it as 9999. that is close. I mean, I find that I like it better when meters at least read over the voltage a little bit rather than under, but you know, under is just as close as over when it's just a couple of millivolts. Now let's get to the millivolts. This is an interesting story. This doesn't have a millivolt range marked, so I was using the volts range. Let's show you that. Well, here's 1 millivolt on the volts range. And I'm thinking, well, that's kind of strange that there's not too many significant digits there. Only, well, let's see. There's 5.0. Yeah, it's okay. You know, there's 10. Reads a little bit low, but that's what this meter does. 25. But there's not much resolution in the millivolt range, and most meters have more resolution than that. So I had to resort to reading the manual. So I read the manual, and it says, oh, if you want the most accurate millivolts reading, then you have to go into the setup mode, and this has a setup mode just like the 121GW or the Fluke 189. They're very similar. And you push the right buttons, and you get in this little mode, and you read the little secondary thing, and you have to read the manual because it's all very cryptic. And they said, oh, you have to turn off the temperature measurement. I go, what? Yeah, because in the temperature measurement, you can select a K or I think a T type thermocouple, or you could tell it you want to measure millivolts. So if you want to measure accurate millivolts, you have to disable this temperature mode, even though it says temperature right there. So let's switch it over. And sure enough, look at your high resolution there. Let's go back to 1. And you get another digit. And I'm thinking, what? They have plenty of room here. They could have added another spot that says millivolts. So this is really, this actually made me think this meter wasn't designed very well. I mean, maybe it works fine, but it's certainly the UI, user interface, is just crappy, where you have to give up temperature measurements. And I'm guessing they figured you would give it up, because even though this will read 2 thermocouples, they didn't give you any. Probably because they considered you, why would you read temperature if you want to read millivolts? Most people want to read millivolts as accurately as possible. So that's a pretty big ding against this meter right there. And it's kind of weird. And coming from Keysight, and you know, Keysight came from Agilent, which came from HP. So I think of HP as, you know, the premier test equipment. And when I found out that Keysight made handheld meters, I go, wow, they must be really good, just like old HP gear. Well, you know, I guess not. Anyway, let's get through this. So there's 1. There's your 5. There's your 10. Your 25. And 50. There's your 100. Now it's starting to read a little low. Oh, there's your 250. There's your 500. Let's see what it does when you take it up to a volt. Oh, doesn't like that. Let's go back over to volts. There you go, 1 volt. Oh, 0.999 volts. There's 1.5 volt. There's 2 volts. Oh, now it's starting to read a tiny bit low, just like it did with the other reference. And 2.5 volts, a little low, which actually this is a little low. This digital analog converter just can't make it up to 2.5 volts. It's some millivolts lower. All right, there's your millivolts. Let's look at the bench test we did for the DC volts. All the readings taken from the DC ranges met the accuracy as specified in the manual. And if you notice, the specification is uniform among all the DC voltage ranges of 0.09% plus 2. The DC input impedance is 11 megaohms for the voltage range and 10 megaohms for the millivolt range. This is very typical of this type of meter. I should mention that there is a written review with more detail. The URL is in the description of this video. And now let's look at AC volts. We got 5 volts from DMM check at 100 hertz square wave, and it's 5.010. Well, that's pretty good. So let's look at the other AC voltages I tested on the bench. The AC voltages I measured, most of them met the specifications as stated in the manual, but unfortunately the 1 millivolt, it was off by 10 microvolts. Similar to the DC ranges, the AC ranges all have the same accuracy specification. Many other meters I reviewed, different ranges have different accuracy specifications. Of course, 1% plus 3 is not great for 10,000 count meter. The AC 1 volt minus 3 dB cutoff was 279.2 kilohertz, which isn't too bad. Well, we're using the DMM check to do some AC current. We're doing 1 milliamp. This guy reads it as 1,000.6 microamps, which is 1 milliamp. Let's see if we can get it the milliamp ranged. There you go. Reads 1.002 in the milliamp range. There we go with the AC. Now let's do some DC. Here's 0.89 microamps, and he reads it as 0.9 microamps. Here's 9.21 microamps, and he reads it as 9.1. Here's 99 microamps, and he reads it as 98.9. That's pretty close. Here's 131.8 microamps, and he reads it as 131.8. Right on the nose. Here is 1 milliamp, and he reads it as 1008.8 microamps, which is really 1.0088 milliamps. It's another unusual thing about this meter is the milliamps and microamps are on the same point in the switch. So they use the same auto ranging, so you don't have to switch between micro and milliamps. It automatically does it for you. So you only have to worry about amps or things that are smaller than amps. Here's 9.98 milliamps, and he reads it as 9.992. Pretty close. Here's 99.4 milliamps, and he reads it as 99.37. That's pretty close. Well, let's take a look at the current readings we did on the bench. All the current readings I took met the specifications as stated in the manual. The current shunt resistance was 0.03 ohms for the amps range, 1.8 ohms for the milliamps range, and 31.37 ohms for the microamps range. The amps and milliamp ranges are typical. The microamp range, that is lower than most of the shunt resistors, which is a good thing. Let's compare the accuracy specifications for voltage and current for this set of 10 to 20,000 count meters. As you can see, the Bryman and the Greenlee is a rebranded Bryman, definitely take the award for the most accuracy specifications that are better than the rest. And obviously the Unity is a little worse than the rest, except in DC voltage, which surprisingly it takes the lead. But the Keysight, which definitely costs more than the rest of these meters, is surprisingly less accuracy specified. The only place it exceeds the others is in the DC microamps and the DC milliamps and the AC milliamps. All the other ranges, it's either mediocre or the worst. So it's kind of surprising. I expected Keysight to fare much better in the actual accuracy specifications because the measurements are very close. But as you can see, they don't guarantee that accuracy as much as the Brymans do. Now I'd like to compare the accuracy specifications for the voltage and current between the Keysight and the Fluke 87V Max. I think these are the closest meters to each other because they're both IP67, which is water and dust resistant, and they're very similar in price. The Keysight's a 10,000 count and the Fluke's a 6,000, but as you can see in most of the ranges, the Fluke has a higher specification for accuracy. The Keysight is higher in DC millivolts, DC microamps, and DC milliamps, but in the rest of the ranges for DC and AC current and voltage, it's the Fluke that beats the specifications to the Keysight, which is surprising. This is 1.004 ohms, and we get 1.06 ohms. It's pretty close. Here's 10.007 ohms, and we get 10.04. Here's 100.069 ohms, and we get 100.1. Here's a 1.001 kiloohm, and it's 1.000. Pretty close. Well, actually, it's right on, because it doesn't have a resolution to see that last one, because it's a 10,000 count meter, so 1.000. Good job. Here is a 10.002, and again, that's right on because it's 10.00. It can't show the 2 because it doesn't have that resolution, but that's okay. Sounds good for 10,000 count meter. Here's 100.02 kiloohms, and you got 100.0 kiloohms. Yeah, can't argue with that. 0.997 mega ohms, and we get 0.993. That's pretty close for the mega ohm range. Here's 9.97 mega ohms, and we get 9.95. Again, that's pretty close for the mega ohm ranges. Here's 100 mega ohm, and it reads it as 98.7. Around 98.7, let's say. That's pretty good. And this is one of the few meters I've tested that can go up to 100 mega ohms. So, good job there. So even though this meter is kind of weird, it's got some good points. Let's take a look at the resistance when I measured it on the bench. The resistor measurements I've taken met the specifications as stated in the manual. It's noteworthy that this meter could read up to the 100 mega ohm resistor. The test voltages used for the resistance range: the low range used 2.35 volts, medium ranges 2.1 volts, and the highest ranges used 0.77 volts. All right, now we're going to measure some capacitance. I would zero out the leads, but they already say they're zeroed. We'll start with the film capacitors, which start out at 1 nanofarad. 1 nanofarad, right on the nose. 9.921. We get 9.9. Very good. Here we go at 99.51, and it's 99.3. That's close. Now we're in the microfarad range, 1.09 microfarads, and we get 1.0075. Here's 10.294 microfarads, and he reads it as 11.064. That's still pretty close for the microfarad range. Here's the second electrolytic. You can do it. It takes a while. This was 112.2, and we get 113.04. And these type of meters measure in electrolytics are always a little more off than they are with film capacitors. This is 944.5, and it's going to take a long time to test this, but I suppose I'd rather have it take a long time than to sit there and keep changing its mind. Let's see what happens. Very long time. We get 998.7. That's pretty good for electrolytics. Well, let's take a look at the measurements we did on the bench for these capacitors. All the capacitance readings met the specifications as stated in the manual. Now let's compare the accuracy specifications for resistance and capacitance for this group of 10 to 20,000 count meters. Well, the Unity, which is the most economical, did fare the worst in almost every range, except for the high capacitance. And again, the Brymans, which is the Bryman BM525S and the Greenlee DM820, which is a rebranded Bryman, both were outstanding, except in the high capacitance range. And that is where the Keysight did very well for specification, was at the high capacitance range. Also in the low and high mega ohm range, the Keithley did good, but everything else, it was kind of mediocre. So again, surprising that I guess I just thought that since its heritage came from HP, that it would have higher specifications, but it is what it is. Now comparing the Keysight to the Fluke with the resistance and capacitance, again, the Fluke beats the Keysight in specifications. Of course, it's very close, but it's still better than, except in the high mega ohm range where the Keysight wins. But in general, it surprises me that the Fluke is just a little more accurately specified than the Keysight. So I would, if you need an IP67 meter, I would definitely go with the Fluke, especially since it has the lifetime warranty and the Keysight's only 3 years. Well, now it's time to do some diode testing. And what is our favorite diode? Well, of course, it's the LED. Well, it reads the forward voltage and it lights the LED. Well, it reads the forward voltage, it lights the LED. No chirping on the LEDs. Well, it reads the forward voltage, it lights the LED. It's a little dimmer, but that's what happens with the green one. No chirping though. Here's the forward voltage of the Schottky diode. No chirps for the diodes either. Now here is a small signal diode, and we got a chirp. Let me let you hear the chirp. It's a very faint, short little chirp. Now let me go back to the Schottky diode and see what... Now there's definitely no chirp on the Schottky diode. Of course, it does have a low forward voltage. I mean, that's the way you use them. Oh, and it does rectifier diodes. Let's let you hear that chirp again. All right. Now let's take a look at the voltage and current it took to measure these. The maximum diode test voltage was 3.15 volts, and the maximum diode test current was 1.26 milliamps. So that's pretty good for doing diode testing. Well, let's do some continuity testing. Let's get out the probe masters and do some tests. Let's hope it works better than the last meter I tested with this. All right, let's see what happens. Good. Latches. Does it light up or anything? Yes, it does. Didn't notice that. Notice the red lights too. Well, it's not super fast, but it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Oh, that's good. Well, like I said, there's some good things about this meter. And then some weird things. If you can put up with the weird things. The Keithley has a optical interface to USB, so you can communicate with the meter with your PC. And Keithley makes software available for Windows, of course, only. And that's what I used and tested on a virtual Windows 11 machine running on my Mac Studio. And it has graphing capability, and it worked pretty good. So if you need a graphing meter that's waterproof, that talks to a PC, this is the meter for you. The battery compartment is sealed a little more tightly than others, so there's more screws to take out, but they're captured. And then it has an inner door, which helps seal the compartment. And the fuses are also in with the battery compartment, so it's pretty easy to get to them. And it uses 4 AAA batteries and, of course, the safety fuses. Well, let's look at the pros and cons of this meter. Well, the good parts of this meter: it's third-party safety tested by CSA for Canada and the U.S. It has the lowest microamp shunt resistor I've measured. All but one reading met accuracy specifications as stated in the manual. It has extensive customization options. It's IP67 rated for and a 3-meter drop tested. It includes the IR to USB adapter. Well, some of the not so good parts of this meter. The 1 millivolt reading in AC did not meet the accuracy specifications. The optional infrared IR to Bluetooth adapter is listed as obsolete with no replacement. They actually have 2 of them, and they're both listed as obsolete, and they're unavailable, so there's no Bluetooth support. The PC logging software hasn't been updated since 2015, and that's a pretty long time. The meter will support 2 thermocouples, but none are provided. They're extra cost optional. And you have to disable the external temperature measurements in setup to measure microvolts accurately. I would say that since this is IP67 waterproof, one of its main competitors is the Fluke 87V Max. And what's really weird is the Fluke is a 6,000 count and this is a 10,000 count. But in many of the areas, the Fluke is more accurate. So, and of course, they work very different from each other. So really, it's going to be up to you whether you want that or this. And if you're comparing it to other 10,000 count meters, it's not that hot. If you're going with a 10,000 count meter, I would definitely not get it. I think either the Brymer or the Greenlee that we tested has more accurate specifications than this does. I mean, you know, lots of meters are better than their specification, but the rubber hits the road when yours doesn't meet the specification, and you send it back to the vendor and say you want it fixed. If it meets what they say the specification is, well, then that's too bad. So that's why I'm kind of harping on this. What do the manufacturer guarantee it'll do? I mean, it's great if your meter's better, and my experience has been with all these meters is many of the reputable ones are better than their specifications, but you know, some of these guys miss them. I mean, this one missed one in the millivolt range. So even the best reputation guys can miss a spec once in a while. And so yeah, if you want a waterproof meter, this does a lot. If you want one that connects to the computer, and then you're pretty much going to use this one. If you want a waterproof. If you want the just 10,000 count and connect to the computer, again, I would say look at the Greenlee or the Bryman that we reviewed. But in general, this has too many idiosyncrasies for me. I mean, it has lots of good parts, and it has, well, let me just review some of the good parts and bad parts as far as I'm concerned. Well, I usually don't do this for meters, but this one, I really wanted to like it, and I want to tell you a little bit about that. It has great customization options. It really is nice, very much like the EVV Blog 121GW and the Fluke 189. It's really nice that the fuses are accessible from the battery compartment, even though it's a water-resistant meter. The battery compartment's set up pretty nicely. It's very good size and weight for what it does. It has a good user guide. You have to download it, unfortunately, but it is a very good user guide. It has a certificate of calibration provided for the cost of the meter. It's not an extra cost option. So that's very good, and very few meters at this price point come with that. And it's IP67. And, I reviewed one other real IP67 meter, which was the Fluke. But I also reviewed a meter that claimed was IP67, but the caveat was you had to have all the lead holes plugged, even the ones you weren't using, if you wanted to keep it waterproof. Here's some things I don't like about the meter. I find them so annoying that I'm going to sell this meter. The default milliamp measurements are inaccurate, and to change them to be accurate, you have to go into the options system and disable the temperature measurements for the external temperature measurement and switch it over to use those setting to measure millivolts. And that greatly increases the accuracy and makes it meet its specifications, except for below 6 millivolts. It still is a little inaccurate compared to its specifications. That is super annoying that you have to choose between accurate millivolts or external temperature measurement. The accuracy specifications in general are lower than I thought they should be for a 10,000 count meter that costs over $400. They should provide a hard copy manual, but they don't. Maybe they're just following what Fluke does, because they don't do hard copy manuals anymore. And I know it's all in the name of saving the planet, but it doesn't really save the planet that much, because I think many of us will download the PDF and just print it. The orange backlight, to me, is very annoying and not very helpful. But that could be my specific vision problems that are causing that, and it may not bother anybody else. But at least for me, that's another very annoying thing about this meter. The unconventional rotary switch layout and the button layouts and the colors they use to mark the buttons, again, are very uncomfortable for me, and the color scheme is very hard for me to read, so I just find it too hard to use this meter. The other thing that's very annoying is the software for this meter is very old. And I see Keysight going on, and they keep sending me ads about how they can help me with my software testing and how wonderful they are in software. I'm thinking, well, how wonderful could you be if you leave your PC software go for, about 9 years without any updates? It just doesn't make sense to me that they would neglect this meter like that unless they're really not serious about this meter. So if you take all those things, I definitely am not keeping this meter. And I don't recommend the meter to anybody. So I think that wraps it up for this guy. I had high hopes because it was a Keysight, but it does some weird things. I mean, maybe people like the way it does things. And if you do, more power to you. And, you know, it costs a few dollars less than the 87V Max. So if you need a waterproof meter and you like the way it works, then you can't go wrong. But if you don't like the way this works, then you got to look somewhere else. So, this is Tom, N8FDY, saying 73, and take it easy.